back to the daily grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. You know what time it is. It's full time
MMA.
And we're back to it with some of the best predictions on the tube. Yeah, we went 6-0 last week. Let's see what we do this week as the UFC returns to Japan. UFC Fight Night, September 22nd. That's next weekend. So today is Sunday the 17th. That's in 5 days. So what is that, on Friday? Let's see, Monday, Tuesday, I don't know. It's probably on Friday. Yeah, it's on Friday. Wow. So it's Friday night fights instead of Saturday night fights. UFC will be in Japan. Main event was Ovent St. Preux, OSP versus Mauricio Shogun Rua. Mauricio Shogun Rua has been pulled out of the main event. I'm not quite sure of the reason. I will look that up though real fast. But he's been replaced by Yushin Okami. Yushin Okami hasn't fought in the UFC for a while, but he has been fighting. At first I thought he hadn't fought since 2013, but that was actually just the last time he was in the UFC. He's been fighting in other organizations. He's still currently on a 4-fight winning streak, but we'll get to that as we get to those predictions. So the first fight of the night is going to be Charles Rosa versus, I got his name wrote down, Charles Rosa versus Mizuto Hirota. Mizuto Hirota is 36 years old. He's 1-5-1 in his last 7 fights. So he's lost 5 fights in his last 7. He's only won 1. 36 years old. It's in UFC Japan, so I'm guessing that's why he's on the card. But I mean, I don't know why he's really in. I don't know. He's 1-5 in his last 1-5-1 in his last 7 fights. So I'm picking against him. He's going against Charles Rosa, who's 2-3 in the UFC, but all of his losses were fight of the night, and his losses were to Dennis Seaver, a split decision versus Yair Rodriguez, and a loss to Shane Burgos. So he's lost to some tough guys, picked up some wins, and so I think he's just going to come in and get the job done. He's also got youth on his side here, so I'm picking him to come in and get the job done, Charles Rosa. Next, we're going to Team Alpha Males, Teruto. I love my bitches, Ishihara, aka Yashabo. He's 10-4-2. He's 2-2-1 overall in the UFC. 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw in the UFC. And I actually, man, I was looking forward to. I had high hopes for him. He was coming off of 2 knockouts, and after he said, "I love my bitches," he was really on everybody's map. He got a main event fight versus Artem Lobov, but in that fight he got clipped up. Artem Lobov took it to Teruto Ishihara. Teruto Ishihara returned, and he fought who did he fight? Teruto Ishihara. He came back. Gray Maynard, and Gray Maynard dominated him. I remember the commentator, he said it would look like Big Brother versus a Little Brother. He got taken down 11 times. So he got dominated by Gray Maynard's wrestling, and he got clipped up by Artem Lobov. But I still believe he's going to come back and get back to his winning ways, maybe even back to his knockout ways, versus Rolando Dai. Rolando Dai is 0-1 in the UFC, 8-5-1 overall, and he got stopped by Blackie Chan Alex Caceres, his only fight in the UFC. So he's definitely no Artem Lobov or Gray Maynard. So I believe Teruto Ishihara, who's been training with Team Alpha Male, one of the top camps in MMA, I believe he's been working on his game, and he's going to get back to his winning ways. He's actually picked up wins in the UFC before, and we haven't seen that out of Rolando Day, who's only 8-5-1, and he's 0-1 in the UFC. So I'm picking Teruto Ishihara to get this W. And then this next fight, I'm kind of fucking confused here. Someone help me out. This guy Gokhan Saki is 0-1. Check this out. Ever. He's 0-1 ever. He's only got 1 professional fight ever, according to UFC and Sherdog, and it was 13 years ago. It was a knockout loss. So he's got 1 professional fight. He got knocked out 13 years ago, and he's going to be fighting on the main card versus Henrique da Silva. Henrique da Silva is 12-3 overall, 2-3 in the UFC. He's coming off of 3 straight losses, but he's been very active. He had 5 fights in a 12-month span. This will be his 6th or 7th fight in 2 years. He's 3 losses were to Ian Kutaleba, Jordan Johnson, and Paul Craig. But he's still been very active compared to his opponent, who's only got 1 professional fight ever 13 years ago. Doesn't seem like I don't understand. Maybe he hasn't even been fighting outside of the UFC because he's only got one fight on his record overall. So I don't. And then on the UFC, they got him like on the left side of the picks, like he's the favorite. So I don't know what the hell's going on there. I'm gonna have to look at the betting odds when we do the fake money bets. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm definitely picking Henrique da Silva here. Gokhan Saki hasn't fought in 13 years. He's only fought one time professionally. It was 13 years ago. It's just baffling that this guy's on here. I don't know if this is a typo or if this guy's really fighting. I don't know what's going on here. So next we've got Takanori Gomi versus Dong Yun Kim. Not Stun Gun though. Dong Yun the Maestro Kim. This fight, at first I thought it was Stun Gun and I was going to be picking Stun Gun. But I think I'm still picking Dong Yun Kim, right? Yeah, I'm still picking Dong Yun Kim, the Maestro, versus Takanori Gomi. Takanori Gomi, I believe he's 38 years old. Yeah, he's 38 years old. He's 1-5 in his last 6 fights. He's only got 1 win, 5 losses, and that's since 2013. He's on a 4-fight losing streak, and he's only fought 1 time in the last 3, like per year in the last 3 years. So once in 2016, once in 2015, once 2014. So Dong Yun Kim, he's 29 years old, so he's got youth on his side. He's 1-2 in the UFC, and he's 14-8 and 3 overall. He's got 2 round 3 knockout losses in the UFC because he's only got 3 fights in the UFC. Dong Yun, the Maestro, he's got 3 fights in the UFC, and his first 2 fights were both round 3 knockout losses, but he's coming off of a decision win. So he's 1-2 in all of his UFC fights, but he's got youth on his side, and he's going against Takanori Gomi, who's on a losing streak. He's 38 years old. He's 4-8 overall in the UFC. So I mean, Takanori Gomi's more experienced here, but he's on a losing streak, and he hasn't been doing too good. So I don't know if he's going to be able to come back in and turn back the clock or something. I mean, I don't know. A lot of these guys, it seems like, they're at home fighting. Maybe that's why they're on the card. So I don't know if some of them are going to fucking come in here with the bang and, try and get past USADA for their last fight and retire on a win, and then it'll be overturned later. I don't know, because if not, I just see some of these guys losing, and maybe it be in their last fights, but I'm not sure. But I'm picking Dong Yun, the Maestro Kim, here for my prediction. Next, we get to the really good fights. Claudia Gadelha versus Jessica Andrade. This is probably the best fight on the card. It actually, with Shogun Rua pulling out, man, yeah, this is to me the best fight on the card for sure. Claudia Gadelha, man, she's one of the coldest strawweights on the planet, #1 contender. There's not even a #2 contender at this point, because she just took out the #2 contender, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and she took her out dominantly with a first round submission victory in her last fight. So Claudia, I think she might move up to 125 pounds just because she's 15-2. Her only 2 losses are both to Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the champion. So maybe she moves up to a fresh division, who knows, because she's the #1 contender. And I think she's going to win this fight in my prediction, and that it's just going to be cementing her place as the #1 contender. She already beat the #2 contender. Now she's about to get the #4 contender. It's like with her and Joanna at the top of the division, these contenders are going to keep getting wiped out because nobody can get past her, and the people that fight Joanna can't get past her. So it's like she can't beat Joanna though, so it's just so interesting. So maybe she goes up to a new division if she can win this fight. Both of these girls have lost to Joanna Jędrzejczyk in their last fight. Jessica Andrade, though, she used to fight at 135 pounds, which is what makes this matchup really interesting, because Claudia, she's got very impressive grappling. Her strength and her jiu-jitsu are one of her biggest strengths is her literal strength. So the fact that she's going against a bigger strawweight, maybe that limits the way she's able to woman handle some girls, and throw them around and use her grappling, because Jessica Andrade is also a very, very strong grappler. Claudia Gadelha was averaging 5 takedowns per fight going into her last fight as far as all of her UFC fights. So she's a dominant grappler. But grappling, having, size really helps in grappling. So going against a bigger person, we'll see how that affects this fight. Maybe Claudia's not able to, you know, ragdoll Jessica Andrade the way she does some of her other opponents. But Claudia Gadelha has also got, you know, really solid striking. She's well-rounded, so I am still picking Claudia to win this fight, but it's going to be a great fight. Jessica Andrade, she's coming off of a loss to Joanna, but she's 3-1 in her last 4 fights. I believe all of those are a straw weight. Since she's dropped down, she's 3-1. She's got strong kicks, strong ground and pound. She's got wins over Jessica Panay, Joanne Calderwood, and Angela Hill. She used to fight at 135, as I said. She's a strong grappler. It's going to be a really interesting fight. I can't wait for this fight, and it's on Friday. So let's get to the main event, the new main event, number 6 ranked. And yeah, I already said Jessica Andrade's ranked number 4. So Ovince St. Preux is ranked number 6, and he's fighting Yushin Okami. He was supposed to be fighting ranked number 5 Shogun Rua, but he's not fighting. I don't know the exact reason he pulled out, but that's not important here because he's not fighting. So it's Ovince St. Preux versus Yushin Okami, and I will be predicting Ovince St. Preux to win here. He's 1-3 in his last 4 fights, Ovince St. Preux is. He's coming off of a very impressive submission victory over Marcos Rogerio de Lima. But before that, he was on a 3-fight losing streak. He lost to John Jones, and that was supposedly the clean John Jones that everyone said, you know, that was the first time we've seen a clean John Jones was versus Ovince St. Preux. He didn't look as dominant as he normally does, so that he lost to John Jones. Then he got KO'd by Jimmy Manuwa, which was, you know, unfortunate. Jimmy Manuwa, though, he can knock people out. That's what he does. He's got some vicious knockouts. But Jimmy Manuwa, he just got knocked out by Volkan Ozdemir, which is who gave Ovince St. Preux his last loss. But it was a split decision loss to Volkan Ozdemir. He welcomed Volkan Ozdemir into the UFC, and he lost via split decision. But then, so that was a 3-fight losing streak. He's coming off of a second round submission win. So I believe Ovince St. Preux is also going to get this victory here, though. Yushin Okami, he's 34-10 overall. I guess we should do Ovince St. Preux's record. OSP is 20-10 overall, and he's got 20 fights in the UFC, 14-6. So that's very impressive. He's got a lot of fights in the UFC, a lot of experience OSP does, and he's fighting against Yushin Okami, who's 34-10 overall, 13-5 in the UFC back when he was fighting in the UFC. But Yushin Okami, he was 2-1 in his last, 3-1 in his last 4 fights in the UFC. But then he hasn't fought in the UFC since 2013. He was fighting at middleweight in the UFC because his last loss was to Jacare, but then he moved out of the UFC. It's looking like at first I thought he just hadn't fought since 2013, but he's just been fighting in other divisions, and he's been 5-2 since leaving the UFC. And 2 of his 2 losses were to David Branch and John Fitch in the World Series of Fighting, and I believe both of them were champions over there. So Yushin Okami, he's actually been more active than you thought. We just didn't know where he was fighting, really, or I didn't. So he's been fighting in other organizations, but he lost to David Branch and John Fitch. Both of them have pretty strong wrestling, which so does Ovince St. Preux. So I don't know, man. And Yushin Okami, he's getting back into the UFC. He's been fighting lesser competition, clearly, since he hasn't been in the UFC or even Bellator. So it is what it is. I'm picking Ovince St. Preux to get the W here. So those are all my predictions. Just a quick rundown of the winners. I got Charles Rosa, Teruto Ishihara, Enrique da Silva, Maestro Kim. Then I got Claudia Gadelha in the co-main event, and Ovince St. Preux taking the win in the main event. And that's what I got for UFC Fight Night Japan. It's going to be a great night of fights. As always in MMA, it's a great day to be an MMA fan, a great time to be an MMA fan. And for you fucking turds that said there was no way, you said there was no fights last night that were as entertaining as Canelo Triple G. No fights on the fucking Luke Rockhold David Branch card. Slap yourself. Every fucking fight on that card was phenomenal. There was what, maybe 1 or 2 decisions. Everything else was a finish. There was comebacks. There was fucking everything, man. So I disagree, but we're gonna keep it in MMA because that's what this channel is. So it is what it is. Let us know what the fuck you talking about in the comments, dude.